So welcome to a New Year's Eve edition of the Bird Brains with Ken and Mark. We're recording this on New Year's Eve. We'll probably post it later in the day, but I want to welcome everybody to a happy podcast. The Eagles crushed the Cowboys 41-7, and even though there's not much of a storyline as far as the game is concerned, we're going to talk about some other stuff, including should Saquon Barkley go for the record or should he sit out? I've gone back and forth on this a couple times, Mark. I'm going to give you what I've finally decided on, and I'm not going to change. So it's an old school way of thinking. But I want to tell everybody, I didn't get to watch the whole game as I usually do. I had to go down to the shore to Cape May. Do you ever spend much time in Cape May, Mark?
I did. I'm not a lot, but every time I love it.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Great restaurants.
And I went down there with John Ruga, who's the owner of Northeast Precasting, who is the co-owner of Trout National. Okay. And that's going to be a special, really special, it's more than a golf course. It's going to be a luxury golf resort down there in Vineland. And I went with the president of TD Bank, my good friend Rob Curley, a couple of the TD guys, and we went down there for dinner. So I had to leave a little bit early, and then I tried to watch the recording of the game. But we're up to snuff because we're going to talk a little bit about what the Eagles did to the Cowboys and then the future going forward for the Birds as they head into the playoffs. I want to mention to everybody that this podcast is sponsored by Gateway Mortgage. See Chris Wilhelm for all your mortgage needs. You can reach him at 856-810-1222. That's Chris Wilhelm, Gateway Mortgage, 856-810-1222. We record this at the SuiteRecording Studios. My good friend Joe Gangemi will take care of you. If you want to do a podcast, go to SuiteRecording.com. And the January issue of JerseyMan is only a day or two away. My buddy Mark Eckel wrote a great piece on the 25 top Philadelphia sports moments, and I'm very fond of number 25. So
I thought you would.
So everybody can guess. Probably
I hope you're fond of some of the other ones as well.
I'm fond of them all, but 25 really. I was a little disappointed until I got to 25. So
I saved the best for last.
You included me in there. So Mark, let's talk a little bit about this game. What you saw from the Eagles. You know, keep in mind, Dallas came out of the gate pretty good. C.J. Gardner-Johnson had that big pick, which kind of reversed things a little bit. And then the Eagles had a pick six, they score. Dallas comes right back down the field and scores. So it's 7-7. The game was actually 7-7 with about 6.5 minutes to go in the first half, and that's when the Eagles took control. But your thoughts on the Eagles and what they did to the Cowboys on Sunday?
Well, I think we learned something. The Eagles are better when they don't do anything in the first quarter.
Yes, right. They got off to a fast start last week.
Washington, they jumped all over them and thought, oh, man, this is going to be a block. And then they lost.
Yeah.
So when they don't do anything in the first quarter, which is most of the season, they haven't done anything in the first quarter.
Right.
They're a great team. They scored 40 points in 3 quarters. So I'm half joking, but that's weird, isn't it?
They'd only run 6 plays with about 5 minutes to go in the first quarter, so they didn't have a whole lot of chance to do anything. But
they didn't do anything when they had the chance.
Right.
No, it was a good win. I mean, Dallas kind of self-destructed a little bit, but that's okay. Good to see Gardner Johnson, who was everybody's whipping boy last week for being an idiot. He did stupid things, and he got blamed for it, and he deserved all the blame that he got. But hey. This is football, right? You come back next week and you make up for it, which is what he did.
The best way to make up for criticism is to make
interceptions and brought one back for a touchdown. Can't beat that. Kenny Pickett. I know people. Some people like him. Some criticize him. You better not ever question the man's toughness. He played with a broken rib.
What is there to criticize? That he's not Jalen Hurts? I mean, no, I'm hearing the same thing that you are. The kid's he's got good mechanics. He has a great drop. He's got a good enough arm strength. So I don't know. I guess it's because he's not Jalen Hurts that people are going to criticize him.
They're the same people that criticize Hurts.
Yeah. And then they even incorporated the tush push for him. So now Kenny can run the tush push. Hey, listen, you got Saquon Barkley behind you pushing you. I think anybody could do that, right?
I mean, he's not Hurts. He's nothing like Hurts. And we talked about that last week when, maybe the Eagles should have gotten a backup more similar to Hurts so that they don't have to change things. And again, here's what people don't understand. You probably I'm sure you understand it more than most because you played and you saw guys get hurt and other guys have to come in. You may be one of them guys that had to go in sometimes when somebody, I don't know. But when you don't, especially quarterback, I mean, wide receiver, offensive line might not be as difficult. Quarterback, Pickett doesn't. Only the starter really gets a lot of work in during the week,
Yes, he
especially
gets.
now.
He
Especially
probably get.
now more than in
I,
the past. They don't
I,
practice that much anymore.
yeah, I would say when Hurts is healthy, Pickett might get maybe 10% of the snaps in
Right.
practice, if that
So,
many, if that
right.
many.
So, and again, that's not a lot of practice. Like practices are over. Nick Vermeil's practices, one of his practices is probably the time length of three of Nick Sirianni's.
Right.
I'm not
That's where
ripping
that's
Nick Sirianni, it's just the way the
no,
game is.
that's the way the game is today. That's about
Practices are
right.
over a lot quicker
Our
than they used to.
practices were 3 hours
Exactly.
usually. Yeah.
So I'm right. They don't go more than
Hmm.
an hour,
Right.
probably, in terms of actual on the field.
Oh
They're in
yeah.
the room, they're doing this, that, and the other thing. But so, Pickett didn't get a lot of work prior to that Washington game. Now Hurts gets hurt, and boom, he's in there. This week he got most of the reps, I would think, because they kind of knew Hurts wasn't going to. Well, he couldn't practice. Hurts wasn't out there at all. So
Right.
Pickett did get a lot of reps, and you saw a better performance.
But of course Pickett had limited reps, I think, because of his rib
But the rip,
injury
so that's
last week, and Tanner McKee, who came in and looked fine.
very
Three
good.
for How about that debut? 3 for 4, 2 touchdowns. Was he
Not
happy
bad.
or what?
Not
And
bad.
then AJ Brown throws the ball into the stands. They got to go get it, his first touchdown. But he
That
got
was
it.
a nice
It cost
gesture by
AJ
AJ
Brown a
Brown.
jersey, but
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't thinking. He was just happy. But
yeah,
then it was nice of him of AJ to find the guy that got the ball and get the ball back and trade him for a. That's a pretty good trade for the guy.
I would say, yeah.
Ball for a
Um,
jersey.
I thought one of the defining plays in the game was the catch that Calcaterra made in the second
Yeah.
quarter, 8:25 to go. He made a great one-handed grab. It was a crucial third down. I think it was 3rd and 8, and he makes a one-handed grab, and they go down and score a touchdown, which kind of opened the floodgates, really. So I've always got to mention those tight ends
I
when
was
they
just
make
going to say you can't.
spectacular plays,
He
Marky.
isn't now. We
Forgive me.
mentioned last week that he's not the best blocking
Good
tight end.
receiver. No,
He's a
I mean,
very good receiver.
yeah, he's poor blocker, and the funny thing about the
He get
Eagles,
better at that though. He's
they
young.
go you can. I mean, some guys are. I had to learn how to block just because I had the hand-eye coordination to catch the ball and run good routes. But as far as blocking was concerned, number one, I didn't lift a lot
He
of
didn't play.
weights growing up playing basketball. So I had to get stronger. And then the technique to blocking is obviously important. That's a learned skill, and that took me a while. But I think I turned into a decent blocker later in my career. Looking at some other numbers very quickly, Devontae Smith, after hurting his wrist in the first half, comes back with 6 catches, 120 yards, and 2 touchdowns. A.J. Brown had 3 for 36 with a touchdown. You know what is interesting about this Eagles team? And I know all teams go through injuries, and Dallas certainly had their share. They were missing their starting quarterback. CeeDee Lamb was out, several other defensive players. But the Eagles go into that game without their starting quarterback, without their starting tight end, and without Nakobe Dean, their starting inside linebacker, and they don't miss a beat. And Saquon Barkley rushes for 31 times, 167 yards. So now let's talk about what you think the Eagles should do. What I'm going to ask you first, because I've got
What do I?
I've solidified my opinion on this. What would you do if you were the
Okay.
Eagles with Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts? Do you sit him out another week to make sure he's okay?
Hurts, yes. Hurts
Okay.
without a doubt. I don't.
Okay.
Hurts does
And
nowhere.
so as far as Hurts is concerned, you're going to risk him not seeing game action for 3 weeks.
Two.
That's
Well, 2 games. So yeah, he'll miss
yeah.
2 games. Two
Well,
and a half.
he's
2.5.
yeah. It's going to be actually it'll be the 3rd week. He'll
But
miss
yeah,
3
no.
weeks.
Anybody? I see. I changed my when the game ended. Okay, I mean you and I texted.
Mm-hmm.
I was all for the record's nice, but
Right.
you rest people. This is you earned, and this is where Andy Reid and I always agreed. And I don't say
And
that
that
a
was
lot.
unusual. You
Yeah,
and
it
Andy
was.
didn't
It
agree
was.
too much.
No, but not with football stuff. But you and people say, "Oh, you couldn't." No, you earned that right. If you locked up the number, he would lock up the number 1 seed, and then what do you got to play for?
Right.
You can't get any better than you are. Who cares if you anybody with any kind of injury, there's no way I'm playing him because you can only aggravate it, and then what? Then you're out for the playoffs. And I was saying that my point was, don't play Barkley because here's my thought. And this is my sinister thought. You're playing the Giants. what if there's some second, third year linebacker
Yeah, one of them wants to make a name for
who
himself and
doesn't like Barkley?
take
Maybe
out
they didn't get
Barkley. Yeah,
along.
yeah,
And he takes a kick. What's a 15-yard penalty to the Giants at this point?
right.
So he takes a late hit on him, or, does something stupid just to say, hey, huh, he ain't gonna break the record. I broke his ankle. Stupid. You never know,
Mm-hmm.
right?
No, you don't.
Something in you don't. And I still kind of feel that way. But if they decide to play him, I mean, it is a once in a lifetime thing to break the
Mm-hmm.
all. But here's the thing: if you play Barkley, you better play his offensive line too.
Exactly. That was one of my
I
my
don't want him
main.
playing behind a bunch of backup offensive linemen because then he's only got that he's not going to get the record, and B, he might get hurt. So if you're going to play him, now there's a cop out answer too. Is that play him the first half, see how many yards he gets. If he's within 5 yards, all right, start him, get to 5 yards, and get his butt out of there.
Mm-hmm.
If he only has 30 yards, then you say to hell with it.
Mm-hmm.
So me personally, if Nick calls me tomorrow and says, "What should I do?" I'd probably say sit him. Don't. But I'm not going to kill him if he does. Let's put it that way.
So it's a very tough call, and you mentioned you and I talked right after the game, and we both kind of agreed that maybe he shouldn't play. I've changed my mind on this, and the reason is because players play. That's what players do. You can't be afraid of injury. When you're afraid of injury and when you're not trying to get injured, that's when you get hurt. So there's only one speed in football, and that's full speed ahead. Now the Hurts thing is a little more complicated because he's got to be cleared by the doctors. He wasn't last week. If the doctors deem him able to play, I see no reason why Hurts couldn't take at least the first quarter or a few snaps in the game just to replicate that game speed so he doesn't have to go that period of time without seeing it. As far as Barkley is concerned,
all he's going to do is hand off every play anyway.
Well,
Barkley's going to get
pretty much
every carry until he gets the record.
What I'm going to suggest is you play your guys in the first half and you go balls out for that record, right? And if you're close, you start the second half and you get it, and then you sit everybody down. But you're right. If he's only got 20 yards in the first half, and you don't, I think at that point you abandon the record. But I do think that I played in an era where guys like Jerry Sizemore and Guy Morris and Stan Walters, all these guys played every snap of every preseason game, every regular season game, and nobody got hurt. Nobody got hurt. And guess what? If you did, that's the nature of the game. Now, the money's different. The investment that these teams have in these players is significant to the point where, they don't want to risk it. And obviously, your star players are the ones that can bring a Super Bowl victory. So I've changed my mind on this. I'd like to see Barkley start and play. I'd like to see the entire offensive line start and play, try to get on the record, and then make a decision at halftime. So
we kind of agreed on that.
Yeah, we did, which we
both think, and like I said, whatever they do, and you know me, I could be critical of coach's decisions. This one I'm not. If he plays them, I'll say okay.
Yeah, there's no really clear-cut right or wrong. No, you can't skewer Sirianni.
What do you? Let me ask you this though. This is what we think. This is just our opinions. I didn't talk to anybody at the Eagles. I don't think you did. What do you think they're going to do? I saw Sirianni's quotes.
I really have no idea. I really don't. I can't get a read from Sirianni. He's taken his time, and rightfully so. I think what happened yesterday is they probably brought Saquon in to a meeting with Nick and Lurie and Roseman and say, listen, this is what we're thinking. What did you want to do? And if Barkley has a firm opinion either way in that meeting, I think that's probably what they're going to do.
Do you think Lurie and Roseman get involved in it?
I do. I do think that when you have a guy that's having a year like they are, like he is, and the team really could make a deep Super Bowl run in this thing, I do think it's going to be a community decision. Let's talk about playoffs. Now, we've got a big game coming up on Sunday night for the number one seed in the NFC. Minnesota is at Detroit. The interesting thing about that game is whoever loses goes to the number 5 seed from 1 to 5.
That's why this is one of the biggest games ever.
That's going to be fun.
I hate using words like ever and all time, but think about it. You got, first of all, it's the most wins by two. It's how can I say this? It's the most combined wins of any two opponents
Right.
ever. 28
Right.
wins.
Right.
No two teams have ever played each other
Oh,
with that
I didn't realize that. That's interesting.
combined.
Huh.
28. Think about it. How many times you get the team with 14 is hard to
Yeah.
get.
Yeah.
They both got 14. So yes, so start with that fact.
Yeah.
28 wins combined, which is pretty impressive.
Who do you like in that game? Who do you like in that game?
I like the Lions.
You like the Lions at home,
Oh,
even though they're decimated by
yeah,
injuries on
I watched.
defense?
They're not decimated on offense.
No, they're not. They are an
They scored
offensive
40 every
machine.
week. So,
Did you
yeah, I
see
like this.
they did the hook and ladder the other day again and scored a touchdown? That guy's going to get a head coaching job.
Oh, both. I think both of their coordinators.
Yeah.
I think Gary Glenn's going to get one too for just keeping that defense somewhat together. But
So,
anyway, here's my thing. So the winner gets the top seed, which obviously they well deserved. But like you said, the loser falls to 5. That's wrong. And I wrote about this for Rant Sports, and I told the story how I used to cover the owners' meetings all the time especially like through the '90s when I was covering when I was the beat writer and everything. Almost every year at the owners' meetings, they would say, "Oh, we're going to bring up a vote on when the playoffs start. If the wild card team has a better record than the division champion, the wild card team would get the home game."
right.
I would talk to a couple coaches, general managers, whoever I could find, and ask their opinions. And I'd say 4 out of 5 would say to me, "Yeah, it should be that way. If we're 11-5 and the other teams in the 9-7, the wild card team should be home. In the same way, if we're 9-7, I understand we got to go on the road."
Mm-hmm.
Or I'd write the story, and the next day the owners would vote, and
Yeah.
they'd vote it down.
Right.
But this has happened like 4 years in a row where they bring it up. All the coaches that I talk to seem to want to change their role, and they never. I don't know why, but they never. And here's 30 years later, and they still haven't changed it. But
So,
I'll tell you what, if Detroit loses to Minnesota, now Detroit was number 1 almost all season.
all year. Yeah.
If they lose to Minnesota, which is very possible, it's a toss-up game, and they fall to 5, and then they have to go to say Tampa Bay, and it's a rainy day in Tampa, and they're off moving in the mud,
Yeah.
and they lose to Tampa Bay, next year that rule will be changed.
It might be. As far as Eagles are concerned, they're locked into the number 2 seed. They've won the division. Who would you rather see the Eagles? Now, you covered the Packers, so you know them pretty well. They scare the hell out of me. Tampa Bay is not a good matchup for the Eagles.
They can't play Tampa.
We've seen that. Oh, that's right. That because
Either
they're
Washington or Green Bay.
It's either Washington or Green Bay. Which one of those two teams? Obviously, I'm thinking that you would rather see the Eagles play Washington.
I just saw them lose to Washington 2 weeks ago.
I know, but that was a
yeah, and it was in. Well, do you want to play a team you're very familiar with? Or do
if
you want to
I was a coach, I would.
Yeah, I think so too. Right?
I would. Yeah.
Less work to put in. Yeah, I think the Eagles would rather play. Well, I love. Listen, Jaden Daniels is without a doubt the rookie of the year. Without a doubt, like that man, he's still a rookie, and a quarterback. Playoffs are different than a regular season. Washington's had a great season. Great season. No, they went from the second worst team in the league to a playoff team. That's hard to do. They deserve. Dan Quinn deserves a lot of credit. Jaden Daniels, that whole organization deserves a lot of credit for turning what was a really bad franchise for a lot of years into a pretty good team. A good, 11-5. That's pretty darn good.
They are a good team.
With that said, yeah, I think the Eagles. Although the Packers' defense right now, the secondary, I should say, is banged up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they're getting guys back. And now they'll rest guys this week because they need to rest because they're hurt. They're not going to. They need to get them healthy for whoever they play, the Eagles, the Rams, the Buccaneers. They still don't know who to, depending on what happens. Now, just to let people know, Washington and Green Bay are tied at 11-5 for the 6-7 spots. Washington has a better conference record, so they're ahead of Green Bay right now.
Mm-hmm.
If Washington beats Dallas, it doesn't matter what Green Bay does. Washington gets to 6 and Green Bay gets to 7.
Mm-hmm.
If Washington loses to Dallas, which you never know what Dallas is going to do. And Green Bay beats the Bears, then Green Bay moves ahead of Washington, and that's how the Eagles would play Washington. So, Green Bay, Philly. It would be the rematch from the opener in Brazil.
Yes, again, my opinion is I do believe the Washington matchup favors the Eagles because it's a more familiar opponent, and I do think Green Bay, even though I am really smitten with Jaden Daniels. I think that Green Bay offense and LaFleur is very early sophisticated, and I think they could cause a few more problems. We're going to end this a little bit short today because I've got a tea time, Mark, and I can't be late for it. I did want to mention in closing that we lost my ex-teammate, number 66, Bill Bergey, this week. Bill had battled jaw cancer for the last 3 years. We're going to say goodbye to him on Thursday in Wilmington, Delaware, and one of the toughest guys I've ever known. I saw him get his knee drained before games many times, never complained, loved the game of football, unlike almost anybody I've ever seen, and that's a huge loss for the entire Eagles family. So we want to wish everybody a very happy New Year. Be safe, be smart, and hopefully you'll be with us next week when we talk about, we have a firm grasp on who the Eagles' opponent will be for the playoffs.
And if Barkley has your record.
That's right. So for my partner, Mark Eckel, this is Ken Dunek. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week. Take care.